In the quiet hills of Montana, a strange sound in the grass led to a moment that would change everything. A young wildlife ranger on a routine patrol found something no one expected to see out here, a starving lion cub, alone and near death. But this wasn't just a rescue. Daniel Hayes had spent years protecting wildlife, but nothing prepared him for what came next. What started as a simple act of kindness became a powerful bond between man and lion, one that would be remembered for years. This isn't just another animal story. It's about how a forgotten cub found hope and how a ranger became part of something much bigger than himself. What happened years later left everyone speechless. Before we begin, tell us where you're tuning in from and don't forget to subscribe. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It was early morning in the remote wilderness of Montana, the kind of quiet that made even the smallest sound echo across the wide-open plains. Daniel had been a wildlife ranger for just under 3 years, stationed near a vast national park bordered by thick forests, creeks, and long stretches of grassland. His job usually involved checking camera traps, tracking elk herds, and making sure illegal hunting didn't go unnoticed. On that particular morning, he had been following the usual trail in his ATV, scanning the edges of a dried-up creek that often served as a watering hole for local animals. As he reached a bend in the trail, the low growl of his engine was suddenly interrupted by a sound he couldn't quite place. It was faint, almost like a whimper or moan carried by the wind. Daniel paused, turned off the engine, and listened. The sound came again, clearer this time. It didn't sound like any of the local wildlife he was familiar with. Curious and concerned, he stepped off the vehicle and walked toward the noise, pushing aside tall grass that reached his chest in some areas. The sound led him to a cluster of dry reeds near the base of a twisted pine tree. His boots crunched over brittle leaves and broken twigs as he approached. Just as he parted the grass with his gloved hand, he froze. Lying in a small depression in the earth was a small lion cub, thin as a stick and barely breathing. Its fur was dirty and tangled, covered in tiny burrs and specks of dried mud. Its ribs were visible with each shallow breath, and its eyes were half-closed, sunken into its tiny face. The first thing that rushed through Daniel's mind was confusion. Lions didn't live in Montana. They weren't part of the local ecosystem and certainly not out here in the open plains. He quickly scanned the area, looking for signs of movement or a potential threat, but there was nothing. No other animals, no prints, no recent tire tracks. Just the still morning and this one fragile creature that looked like it had been abandoned for days. He took a careful step closer. The cub didn't react. It was too weak. Daniel crouched beside it and gently reached out his hand. He didn't touch the animal at first. Instead, he checked for injuries or any obvious signs of trauma. The cub's left hind leg looked swollen and there was a crust of dried blood near one ear. It was hard to tell whether it had been attacked or simply injured trying to move through the brush. 100 thoughts ran through his head. This wasn't just a rescue situation, it was a mystery. How did a lion cub end up here in the middle of nowhere? Was it from a private collection? An illegal breeder? Did someone abandon it here, or had it somehow escaped? Whatever the case, the cub wouldn't last much longer if he didn't act quickly. He gently slid his hands under its small frame. The cub was warmer than he expected, but barely. As he lifted it, its head rolled against his arm and a small, raspy breath escaped from its nose. Daniel could feel how light it was. A lion cub should have weighed more. This one felt like a bundle of sticks wrapped in fur. He held it close against his chest, protecting it from the cold morning wind as he returned to the ATV. Inside the vehicle, he grabbed an emergency blanket from the storage compartment and wrapped the cub tightly, creating a nest of warmth. Then he started the engine and turned the vehicle toward the nearest wildlife rehabilitation center. It was over 2 hours away through back roads, hills, and rough trails. He drove as fast as he could without jostling the small body resting on the seat beside him. Every few minutes, he'd glance over, checking to see if the cub was still breathing. Each rise and fall of its chest brought a small sense of relief, but also a growing weight in his stomach. He'd seen animals in bad shape before, but this was different. This cub had no business being here and no one to take care of it. It wasn't just injured, it was out of place, out of luck, and out of time. The drive felt longer than it was. Potholes and sudden turns made it hard to keep steady, but he focused on the road and the quiet sound of the cub's breathing. When the center finally came into view, nestled between rows of pine trees and a fenced-in clearing, Daniel felt his shoulders drop just slightly. He pulled up to the emergency entrance and rushed inside with the bundle in his arms. The staff moved quickly once they saw what he was holding. The cub was taken from him, examined, and rushed into a back room. Daniel stood by the door, unable to do anything but wait. He looked down at his hands, still covered in dirt and fur. The warmth from the cub still lingered in his skin. He didn't even know if the animal would survive the night. But something deep in him said he had to try. Daniel waited in the hallway leaning against the cold wall. His eyes stayed on the door the vet had gone through. Time moved slowly. People passed by, but no one spoke to him. His hands still felt warm from holding the lion cub. That feeling made it hard to sit still. He kept wondering if the little animal was going to live or die. After what felt like hours, a nurse came out and told him the cub was alive but very weak. It had an infection, was dehydrated, and hadn't eaten in days. The vet was doing everything to help it, but they couldn't make any promises. The next few hours were very important. Daniel nodded. He didn't want to leave. The nurse showed him a bench where he could wait. He sat there, not knowing what else to do. He looked around the small clinic. There were pictures of rescued deer, foxes, and owls on the walls. But this was different. A lion cub in Montana was something no one had seen before. Later that evening, the vet finally came out. He looked tired but calm. He explained that the cub had a fever and was given fluids and medicine. They were trying to feed it through a tube. Its back leg was swollen from a bad cut, probably from sharp rocks or wire. The vet said it might have come from someone keeping it illegally and then letting it go. Daniel listened carefully. He felt anger rising inside. People who bought wild animals and treated them like toys often caused suffering. This poor cub was just a baby, left alone in a place it didn't belong. The vet asked Daniel questions: where he found it, what it looked like, how it acted. Daniel told him everything. The vet said they would try to report the case to wildlife officials, but finding who dumped the cub would be very hard. There were many people who kept wild animals in secret. That night, Daniel didn't want to go home. He stayed in the clinic on the bench. A nurse gave him a blanket. The building was quiet except for the soft humming of machines from the rooms behind the wall. He thought about the cub's eyes, the way it looked at him before falling asleep. It had been afraid but also seemed to trust him. The next morning, he was allowed to see the cub. It lay on a small heated bed wrapped in soft towels. A thin tube was taped to its leg. Its chest moved slowly. It looked up at Daniel but didn't move. Its eyes were dull, but it blinked when he came closer. That gave Daniel a little hope. He asked if the cub had a name. The nurse shook her head and said no one had named it yet. Daniel looked at the tiny lion and quietly thought of the name, Leo. It felt right. Leo was fighting for life, and he was brave even while weak. Every day after that, Daniel came to visit. He brought warm blankets, milk formula, and even a small stuffed toy. At first, Leo didn't show much change. He stayed still, barely moving. But slowly, he started to lift his head. Then, a few days later, he made a soft sound when Daniel entered the room. One afternoon, Daniel came in and found Leo standing for the first time. His legs were shaking, but he stayed up. The vet smiled and said the little lion was a fighter. He was eating soft food now and responding to touch. This gave everyone hope that he might make it. Daniel felt more connected to Leo with each visit. He stopped seeing him as just a rescued animal. Leo had become something more, like a small friend who needed him. The vet said Leo still had a long way to go, but if he kept improving, they would have to think about what to do next. A lion couldn't stay in the rehab center forever. Daniel didn't think about the future just yet. Right now, all he cared about was helping Leo get stronger. Every time he looked into those golden eyes, he felt the same thing. He had found Leo for a reason. And now he had to stay with him until the end, whatever that end would be. The days passed slowly, but Leo was getting better. Daniel visited every morning before work and came again in the evening. The staff at the rehab center started to smile when they saw him walk in. They knew who he had come to see. Leo was now strong enough to sit up without help. He started moving his head when Daniel entered the room. Sometimes he even made a soft sound like a small growl or purr. Daniel began talking to Leo in a calm voice during his visits. He didn't know if Leo understood the words, but the sound seemed to make him relax. Daniel brought soft brushes to clean Leo's fur and kept bringing new blankets. He even played gentle music, and Leo listened with his eyes half closed. The bond between them grew each day. When Daniel reached out his hand, Leo no longer flinched. Instead, he leaned in as if he wanted the touch. This made Daniel feel proud. The little cub had come so far from the weak, scared animal he had found in the grass. He wasn't just surviving now, he was starting to trust. One evening, something special happened. Daniel came in with a small bowl of milk. Usually, a nurse had to feed Leo, but this time Daniel tried. He held the bowl close and waited. Leo sniffed the air, then slowly pushed his face into the bowl and began to drink. It was a small thing, but it felt big to Daniel. It showed that Leo was getting stronger and more comfortable with him. Later that week, the vet told Daniel some good news. Leo's infection was gone and he no longer needed the feeding tube. His leg was healing well and he had started to walk short distances. The vet said he would soon be moved to a bigger room, one with soft grass, trees, and more space to walk and play. It was a big step in recovery. When Leo was moved to the outdoor room, Daniel followed. The space was much larger and the sun shone down through tall trees. Leo walked slowly at first, testing the ground with each step. Daniel sat on a bench and watched, not speaking. He didn't want to rush him. After a while, Leo walked over and lay beside Daniel's feet. The closeness said more than words. Daniel felt proud but also a little worried. He knew this kind of progress meant new choices would have to be made soon. A lion couldn't stay here forever. The rehab center was not a home for wild animals. It was a place for healing, not living. One day, Leo would have to leave. Daniel didn't like the thought, but he pushed it away for now. He focused on each moment instead. He brought toys, softballs, ropes, and even a small tire swing. At first, Leo ignored them, unsure of what to do. But Daniel showed him how to bat the ball, how to bite the rope and pull. Slowly, Leo began to play. Watching the young lion learn brought joy to everyone at the center. Daniel took pictures and videos. He shared them online to tell people about Leo's journey. Many people responded with kind messages. Some donated money to the rehab center. Others shared their own stories of helping animals. Leo's story was spreading and it was touching hearts everywhere. Still, Daniel never let himself forget how this all started with a weak cry in the grass and a small life on the edge. Every time he looked into Leo's eyes, he saw both strength and sadness. Leo had survived something terrible, something no animal should go through. And yet, he was still gentle, still open to love. One night, Daniel stayed later than usual. The stars had come out and the center was quiet. He sat outside Leo's enclosure, watching the lion sleep under a tree. His breathing was deep and calm. Daniel felt a mix of emotions, happiness, hope, but also fear. The journey was far from over. But for now, Leo was safe. And that was enough. Weeks went by and Leo grew bigger and stronger. His fur was shiny now and he had more energy each day. He ran around the outdoor enclosure, climbed small rocks, and even chased leaves in the wind. The staff at the rehab center said they had never seen a lion recover this well after being found in such bad shape. But they also said something else. Leo was growing too fast and soon he would need a real home. Daniel knew this moment would come. The center was a place for recovery, not long-term care. Wild animals needed space, safety, and sometimes a family of their own kind. A full-grown lion couldn't stay near humans forever, even one as gentle as Leo. Still, the idea of letting him go was hard to think about. Every day, Daniel tried to enjoy the time he had. He continued to visit in the mornings and evenings. Leo would run to the fence when he saw him, making soft sounds that seemed like joy. Daniel often brought food now, pieces of meat, special vitamins, and sometimes little treats. Leo trusted him completely. He followed Daniel around the enclosure, lay beside him, and even played rough games with his large paws, careful not to hurt him. Daniel worked with the staff to teach Leo new things. They showed him how to find hidden food, how to climb stronger branches, and how to use his sharp senses. These were important skills for lions who lived in the wild or in larger protected areas. Daniel watched closely, wanting Leo to succeed. One afternoon, the director of the rehab center asked to speak with Daniel. She told him they had found a wildlife sanctuary in Colorado that could take Leo. The sanctuary was large, safe, and had other lions. It was built for animals like him, rescued from bad places and given a second chance at life. They explained it was one of the best options with trained staff and open spaces. Daniel sat in silence for a moment. He knew this was the right thing. Leo couldn't stay here forever. And he couldn't live with Daniel either. Lions needed space and other lions. But in his heart, Daniel felt a sharp pain. Letting Leo go felt like saying goodbye to a part of himself. He asked for some time to think. That night, he stayed late again, sitting by Leo's enclosure. The lion was resting, his eyes half closed, looking peaceful. Daniel whispered softly to him, even though he knew Leo couldn't understand every word. Still, he believed the lion felt something from his voice, calm, love, and maybe sadness too. The next day, Daniel gave his answer. He agreed to the move, but only if he could travel with Leo to the sanctuary. He wanted to be the one to say goodbye. The staff agreed, and plans were made. Over the next week, Daniel prepared Leo for the change. He brought in the transport crate and let Leo get used to the smell and shape. At first, Leo was nervous and didn't want to go near it. But with Daniel's help, he slowly learned to enter and leave the crate without fear. Daniel didn't want the trip to be scary. On the day of the move, the air felt heavy. Daniel arrived early. He found Leo waiting by the fence, just like every morning. They played one last time and then it was time to go. The staff gave Leo a small dose of calming medicine to make the trip easier. When the crate door closed, Daniel felt his heart sink. He rode beside Leo in the transport truck, watching him sleep through the glass. The trip to Colorado took hours, but Daniel didn't care. He just wanted to be there when Leo woke up to let him know he wasn't alone. As the truck moved down the road, Daniel thought about all the moments they had shared, the rescue, the feeding, the first time Leo stood on his own. It had all gone by so fast. Now everything was about to change. But Daniel promised himself one thing. This wasn't the end. He would find a way to see Leo again. He just had to. The sun was going down when the truck finally reached the sanctuary in Colorado. The air smelled different there, cleaner, with the scent of pine trees and wide open land. Tall fences surrounded the area and there were signs everywhere showing pictures of lions, tigers, and other wild animals. It was a peaceful place, far from cities and noise. Daniel hoped Leo would feel safe here. The staff welcomed Daniel and helped unload the crate. They moved slowly and carefully, not wanting to scare the sleeping lion. The vet at the sanctuary checked Leo right away. He said the lion looked healthy and strong, thanks to the care Daniel had given him. They decided to let Leo rest through the night in a quiet part of the enclosure, far from the other lions. It would be easier for him to adjust without too much noise or activity. Daniel stayed close. He didn't leave the area. He sat outside the enclosure, watching the crate from a distance. When Leo woke up, he was confused and shaky. He looked around, searching for something familiar. When he saw Daniel, he seemed to relax a little. Daniel spoke to him softly and stayed until the lion fell asleep again. The next few days were hard. Leo didn't like his new home at first. He didn't eat much and he stayed in the corner of his new space. He looked at the fences and listened to the sounds of other lions in nearby enclosures, but he didn't go near them. The staff said it was normal. Some animals took time to feel safe in a new place. Daniel stayed at the sanctuary for a week. He came every morning and sat with Leo. He didn't try to force anything. He just stayed close, sometimes reading a book or talking quietly. Leo slowly began to move more, walking short distances and sniffing around his area. But Daniel could see it in his eyes. Leo wasn't happy. The staff told Daniel that lions needed time to adjust. They were hopeful that Leo would join the other lions soon, but it had to happen slowly. Daniel understood, but it didn't make him feel better. He didn't want to leave Leo, not when the lion was still unsure and quiet. But work was calling and he had to return to Montana. Before leaving, Daniel met with the sanctuary manager. They promised to send him updates about Leo's health and progress. They also said Daniel could visit anytime. That helped a little. On his last day, Daniel sat by the fence, watching Leo rest in the sun. He didn't try to say goodbye out loud. He just stayed quiet, hoping Leo would remember that he wasn't alone. When it was time to go, Daniel stood up and walked away slowly. He looked back one last time. Leo had lifted his head and was watching him. Their eyes met through the fence. It was a short moment, but it meant everything to Daniel. He nodded once and kept walking. Back in Montana, Daniel went back to his regular work, checking cameras, tracking animals, and writing reports. But everything felt different. His thoughts kept drifting to Leo. He wondered if the lion was eating, if he was sleeping, if he had started playing again. He missed the sound of his soft growl and the way he walked beside him like a friend. The rehab center staff asked about Leo often. They had grown to love the young lion too. Daniel shared every update he received from the sanctuary. The messages were short at first. Leo was eating a little, walking more. He was still quiet, but he wasn't sick or injured. That was something. Then, after a few weeks, a message came that made Daniel stop in his tracks. Leo had stopped eating again. He wasn't playing or moving much. The staff were worried. They thought Leo might be missing something or someone. Daniel's heart sank. He knew what that meant. Leo hadn't forgotten him. The bond they had built was still there, even across all those miles. Daniel didn't waste time. He packed a small bag and booked a flight. He knew what he had to do. He was going to Colorado again. Not just to visit, but to remind Leo that he was still loved, still remembered, and never left behind. Daniel arrived in Colorado late in the evening. The sky was dark and the air felt cooler than before. As soon as he got off the plane, he rented a car and drove straight to the sanctuary. It was already closed for visitors, but the staff had been told he was coming. They opened the gates and let him in quietly. He walked past the enclosures, hearing the soft growls and heavy breathing of lions resting in the night. But his focus was only on one of them. When he reached Leo's area, everything felt still. The young lion was lying under a tree facing the opposite direction. He didn't move when Daniel arrived. The staff warned him to be careful. Leo was bigger now, strong and wild. He had grown fast over the last few months and was no longer the small cub Daniel once held in his arms. They said Leo had become distant, not interested in food or the other lions. He stayed alone, quiet, and tired. Everyone was worried about him. Daniel didn't ask for anything. He just wanted to be close. He sat down outside the fence and waited. After a few minutes, Leo turned his head slowly. At first, he didn't react. Then he stood up. His body was thin and his steps were heavy. He walked toward the fence, stopped just a few feet away, and stared. It felt like time froze. Neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Leo came closer. He pressed his head against the fence. Daniel reached out and gently placed his hand on the other side. He didn't speak, didn't cry. He just sat there, letting Leo see and feel that he was real, that he had come back. The next morning, something changed. For the first time in weeks, Leo ate his full meal. He walked around more, sniffed the corners of his space, and looked more awake. The staff were surprised. They said they had never seen such a fast change. Daniel didn't feel surprised. He believed Leo had been waiting, just waiting for someone he trusted. Daniel stayed for several more days. Each morning, he visited Leo. They sat together, sometimes played with a rope toy, sometimes just rested. The staff started to smile again. Leo was getting stronger. He showed interest in the world around him. He even started watching the other lions from a distance. One afternoon, the sanctuary manager met with Daniel. She said that Leo was finally ready to begin the next step. They would open the gate between his enclosure and a nearby area with 2 other young lions. These lions were rescued too and had been raised with care. The hope was that Leo would bond with them. Daniel agreed, though he felt nervous. Leo had never spent real time with other lions before. What if he didn't get along? What if he got scared again? But he knew it had to happen. Leo couldn't live alone forever. The gate was opened slowly while Daniel and the staff watched from outside. Leo stood still at first. The other 2 lions came into view, curious and calm. They didn't attack or growl. They just waited. Leo took one step forward, then another. Soon, the 3 lions were facing each other. It was quiet. Then one of the lions gave a soft sound and lay down. The other followed. Leo waited a moment, then walked over and sat near them, not too close, but not far either. It was a good sign. Daniel let out a long breath he didn't know he was holding. That night, Daniel watched from a distance as the 3 lions rested together. They weren't playing yet, but they were peaceful. Leo didn't look lost anymore. He looked like he was starting to belong. Daniel knew it was almost time to leave again, but this time felt different. He wasn't leaving a scared, lonely cub. He was leaving a strong, growing lion who was finally starting to heal in a place where he could be himself. As he walked back to the guest house at the sanctuary, Daniel looked up at the stars. He didn't know what the future would bring for Leo, but he knew one thing. Their story wasn't over. It was only changing, moving into a new chapter, one where Leo would have to find his place, but never without Daniel's care behind him. Daniel flew back to Montana after spending a week at the sanctuary. It was hard to leave, but he felt better this time. Leo had made progress. He was eating, walking, and slowly getting to know the other lions. Daniel hoped the young lion would continue to grow stronger and feel more at home in his new surroundings. Back at work, Daniel tried to focus on his job again. He went on patrols, checked animal tracks, and helped visitors understand wildlife safety. But his thoughts kept going back to Colorado. He missed Leo. Every evening, he checked his phone, waiting for updates from the sanctuary staff. The messages were hopeful at first. Leo was behaving well. He had started to play with the 2 other young lions. He followed them, watched them hunt small toys, and even shared food with them. The staff said they were surprised by how quickly Leo had adjusted after Daniel's visit. But a few months later, the updates began to change. Leo had become quiet again. He didn't play much and sometimes refused to eat. The other lions still accepted him, but he stayed away from them more often. The vet at the sanctuary said Leo wasn't sick. He just seemed sad. They believed he was still missing Daniel. Daniel didn't know what to do at first. He wanted to return right away, but work had become busy and he couldn't leave. He felt helpless, knowing Leo needed him but being unable to be there. He spent many nights thinking about their time together, how he found the cub in the grass, how he held him during that first ride to the clinic, and how they had built such a strong bond. One morning, Daniel received a call. The sanctuary staff asked him to visit again. They believed Leo's health and mood were getting worse, and they thought Daniel's presence might help. They had seen what happened the last time. They believed it could happen again. Daniel packed his bag without thinking twice. He took time off work and booked a flight to Colorado. On the plane, he looked out the window and hoped Leo would remember him again. It had been many weeks since their last meeting. Leo had grown more by now. He might not be the same lion anymore. Daniel wondered if the bond they once had was still there. When he reached the sanctuary, it was early morning. The sun was just coming up. The staff led him straight to Leo's area. The lion was lying in a corner, not moving much. His body looked healthy, but his eyes were tired. He didn't even lift his head when people walked by. Daniel stepped closer to the fence and sat down quietly. He didn't call out or make any noise. He just waited like he used to during the early days at the rehab center. After a few minutes, Leo turned his head slowly. Their eyes met. At first, there was no reaction. But then Leo stood up. He walked to the fence slowly but with purpose. His face changed. His eyes lit up and his ears moved forward. He stopped right in front of Daniel and pressed his head against the fence. It was the same way he had greeted him the last time. The staff stood nearby, watching with surprise. One of them asked if Daniel wanted to go inside the enclosure. Daniel nodded. The staff were careful. They reminded him that Leo was no longer a cub. He was a full-grown lion now, strong and powerful. They warned him again and again that it could be dangerous. But Daniel believed in the bond they shared. He put on the safety gear, walked to the gate, and stepped inside. Everyone held their breath. The moment was tense. No one knew how Leo would react. Inside the enclosure, Daniel walked slowly. He didn't reach out or speak. He just let Leo see him, smell him, remember him. Leo watched him for a moment. Then he moved closer. There was no fear, no growl, no sign of anger. Instead, Leo pressed his head against Daniel's chest, just like he used to when he was small. Daniel stood still, gently resting his hand on Leo's back. The staff watching from the outside couldn't believe what they were seeing. The big lion nuzzled Daniel, rubbed his face against him, and lay down beside him like a calm, happy cat. There was no danger. Only peace. That day, everything changed again. Leo was no longer lost. Daniel's return had reminded him of who he was, not just a rescued lion, but one who had been loved, saved, and never forgotten. After the reunion, the air at the sanctuary felt lighter. Everyone was amazed by how Leo had acted. Some of the workers had seen many animals over the years, but they had never seen a full-grown lion react that way to a person. Daniel's return had clearly brought something back to Leo, a feeling of safety, comfort, and connection. Daniel stayed for several more days. He spent most of his time inside Leo's enclosure or just outside the fence. Leo followed him around, just like when he was a cub. He rubbed his head against Daniel's side and lay near him during the day. Sometimes they just sat in silence, enjoying the sun and fresh air. Other times, Leo played with a rope or chased a toy ball, acting young again. The sanctuary staff were happy. Leo started eating more, sleeping better, and even showing interest in the other lions nearby. He seemed stronger, more alert, and less nervous. His eyes, once tired and dull, now looked alive again. It was clear that Daniel's presence was helping him heal. One of the workers told Daniel they had never seen Leo this calm. She said it was like watching a different animal. Daniel smiled but also felt something deep in his chest. He was proud of Leo, but he knew their bond came with a cost. It meant Leo missed him every time he left. And Daniel couldn't be there forever. The sanctuary had a plan. They wanted to help Leo become more independent. They believed that with the right support, he could learn to live more comfortably with other lions. The first step was to let him spend more time in a shared space where he could meet other lions in a slow and safe way. Daniel agreed to help with the process. He joined the team during the introductions. They opened the gates between Leo's space and a nearby enclosure where two friendly lions lived. These lions were calm and had lived in the sanctuary for a long time. They didn't show any signs of aggression. Leo was curious but careful. At first, he stayed close to Daniel, watching the other lions from a distance. The other two lions didn't force anything. They lay in the grass, rested, and showed that they were not a threat. Over time, Leo walked closer. He sniffed the air, circled the area, and even sat down near them. After a few days, something beautiful happened. One of the lions walked up to Leo and gently touched his nose. It was a friendly sign. Leo responded by rubbing his head lightly. The staff clapped quietly from the outside. It was the beginning of something good. Daniel stayed quiet, just watching. He didn't want to interrupt the moment. He knew this was important. Leo was starting to build a new life, not just with him, but with his own kind. That had always been the goal. In the days that followed, the three lions began spending more time together. They shared space, food, and even played a little. Leo seemed more at ease. He still followed Daniel, but he also started walking off on his own more often. Daniel could see the change. Leo was growing, not just in size, but in spirit. Daniel kept a journal during this time. He wrote about each step, each small success. He wanted to remember it all. He also took pictures and videos to share with people who had followed Leo's story from the beginning. Many of them were still sending messages of support. Some even donated to the sanctuary. On Daniel's last day at the sanctuary, he sat under a tree while Leo lay nearby. The two other lions were resting a few feet away. Daniel looked at the scene and felt both joy and sadness.